All right, I think everything's up and running now, so we'll just give it a couple more minutes since we're supposed to start at 7. So let everybody that wants to attend show up, and we'll get it started.
Okay. So you're going to give our Central Florida section a good plug, right?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, I forgot. I got to go on LinkedIn. Let's see.
All right, we can probably go ahead and get started. You guys should be able to see my screen now. And we are actually restreaming this on YouTube tonight as well as our Zoom call. So if you're on the Zoom call, um, just to let you guys know, yeah, we're restreaming on YouTube. Some people find it easier to watch there, and that also records it for us, so it will be available later. If anybody couldn't make the event tonight, they can always watch the presentation at a later time. So we can share that link if you know anybody that's interested and wasn't able to make it tonight. So to start out, just a little bit of an overview about our organization. My name is Chris Stevens. I'm the chair of the Central Florida section of AIAA, the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. AIAA is the largest aerospace professional organization in the world with members all over the world, a total of about 30,000 right now. They host technical committees and forums and journals and pretty much everything that you would expect in an aerospace organization that has membership from every major corporation and aerospace organization in the world. Here in the Central Florida section, you can see the map on the right. We cover kind of the Orlando, Gainesville, Tampa, western central section of Florida. Our job is to service our local aerospace community here. So the professionals, the retirees, as well as the students. All the students at UCF and UF in their student branches are automatically members here. So we try to do a lot of stuff with that. There's always a misconception that we're the professional chapter, but if you're a member of AIAA nationally, you've paid that $25 a year, then you're a member of the Central Florida section as well. And students are always welcome at any of our events and any of our meetings. We always love to work with you guys and help support the next generation. We all came up through colleges at some point, right? So that's what we're here to help out with today. We have some great speakers that are going to talk about kind of their experiences as well as what they look for when they're looking at resumes and interviewees for aerospace positions for students and young professionals. Some upcoming events that we have. Right now we have a spring dinner event that we're planning in April. We don't have the date locked down with the venue yet, but we will be announcing that information as soon as it's confirmed. So keep an eye out for that. It's going to be really cool. We're going to get a good speaker, some good dinner, and meet with all of our local professionals and students in the area. So it'll be a lot of fun. If you're interested in learning more about us, engage.aiaa.org/Central Florida. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We record most of our events. Even if it's in person, we've recorded a few with webcams. So you're always welcome to check out the YouTube channel at any point and see any of our previous events if you're interested in seeing speakers like Dr. Ralph Lorenz about the Dragonfly mission to Titan. That was a really cool presentation, as well as our previous workshop on space fairs. That was a lot of fun with Chris Wanjak talking about kind of the human sides of traveling to Mars and long-term space travel and how that's going to affect the people, not just the technology to get there. So tonight we have a few great speakers for you. Our resume portion of tonight's event will be presented by Walter Hammond. Walter is retired from NASA, spends his time now volunteering with the AIAA Central Florida section, as well as working with UCF on senior design. So he's enjoying his retirement by helping further the future of the community in aerospace. And we also have Jose Castillo and Liam O'Connor from Lockheed Martin Missiles and Fire Control that will be doing our interviewing session tonight. So with that, I will hand it over to Walter to get us started. If I can figure out how to stop sharing my screen, which apparently I can't. There we go.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Walter Hammond, and I'm going to share, well, before I share my screen, so writing a resume. Tonight we're going to cover resume writing briefly, and then we're going to talk about interviewing skills. You will never get an interview if you do not have a good resume. So a resume is kind of like your entry permit, and it's necessary. It has been for a long time. I'm going to go over the basic elements of a resume tonight, and I'm going to I would like to offer Chris, can we have the people unmute if they have questions?
Yeah, they can unmute or they can enter them in the chat as well.
Okay, well, I'll monitor the chat then. Okay, well, let's get started. Let me see. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. I guess I've been sharing my screen all along. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep, I can see it, Walter.
Okay, so let's start with what a resume is, okay? Let's see. Okay, so here is a resume. It happens to be my resume. So this is a simple resume, okay? Let me see if I can everybody, let me try to make it bigger. All right, I hope everybody can see it. All right. So in a resume, what you're doing, you're basically in one page, in this case one page, I'm encapsulating who I am, how you can get a hold of me, what is my objective, what's my education, military service, and so on, as you can tell. Other elements in a resume, if you're in the DoD world, you have a thing called a security clearance. You can also put your background and your interests at the bottom of the resume. Typically, people put references will be furnished upon request. So this is a very simple resume, right? I weighed 160 pounds back then. I wish I weighed that much. I was 28 years old. So this simple resume got me 4 job offers. That's 4. So it's not just doing the resume, it's getting it out there to the right people, using your contacts. And back then, this was in 1976 when I left the Air Force. There was no such thing as LinkedIn. And I want to emphasize that you need a presence on LinkedIn. For one, you need a presence on social media, mandatory. You can, LinkedIn is a good choice for your jobs. As you can tell, it's set up pretty good, pretty well. It's very friendly for job searches. It also is a good way to showcase your capabilities. You know, like here I'm showing highlights, activity, experience. So use LinkedIn as a resource to put yourself out there and what your experience is. Here's my experience. Here's my education, and my skills. Okay. So it's essential to use social media. So what other social media can you use? Well, you can use Facebook as another good social media platform to stay in touch. It gives you, for instance here, it encapsulates who you are, your friends, photos, whatever. So it's a good good medium, but the ideal one for job searching that is the best for searching for jobs or making yourself known is LinkedIn. I think managers now, astute managers, particularly in an important position, maybe a non-entry level position, they probably will look at your social media. So you better watch what you post. Now in my case, I have another social media. I have a Walter Sierra. So in other words, you can have more than one social media account. In my case, I have Walter Sierra, which is my author social media. And I have that on LinkedIn. Here's my LinkedIn, Walter Sierra, and then my Facebook. Now, some of you that are younger in the audience might think I'm old-fashioned. Well, Facebook, that's old-fashioned. But TikTok, I have a friend that has 50,000 followers on TikTok. And so I'm going to get smart about TikTok. So I recommend that you, listening to this video, get with the latest social media, TikTok being an example, and make your presence known. It broadens your outreach and makes people know who you are. Now then, so let's look at some resumes. Here, let's see. Sorry. Okay, let's see. All right, I'm going to start with this. Okay, so resumes. The elements of a resume, I kind of covered that. So can somebody tell me what makes a great resume? Anybody? I think I've just told you, you have good elements, you're a one-pager. What is a resume? It includes your life experience. Yes, I have somebody that wants to say something. No? Okay. Let me see. I really can't see the chat. Chris, can you monitor the chat for me and let me know if something comes up? Thank you. So then, how long does the average employer spend looking at your resume? I hate to tell you, but not very long. So, particularly if you're entry level, which I assume most of you listening to this broadcast are, or very early in your careers, they don't spend very long. And the higher level the manager, the less time he'll spend looking at your resume. Unfortunately, there's this thing called human resources. Every large company has a human resources department, and I have had students in my classes, fresh outs that say it's not that easy to get a job. Others, they can spend a few months trying to find a position in industry. Um, so I kind of went over the elements of a resume. That you put your contact information, your resume title. Um, here's a good hint. A short, relevant sentence that reflects the words used in a job posting. So in other words, if you have a resume and you're providing it to a prospective employer, it helps if you, I'll say tailor, if you have something that reflects the fact that you've looked at a job posting, are familiar with the job posting, have done research on the job posting, know about the company, don't just send 100 resumes out without researching. It's better to have 5 focused resumes than 100 that you're just throwing out there through and catch as catch can. No, it's better to have a focused, do your research on the company that's readily available now, a lot better than it was back when I was in the job market, and find out who they're hiring. Don't, for example, Lockheed Martin has an excellent job openings page. You can investigate the job openings and see which one fits you best. But you need to apply and do the research, no matter which company. Word of mouth and networking. Again, social media. That's the best way to get contacts and to get leads. You can't beat your social networks or your friends' networks, or maybe you know somebody that's already in industry. He can tell you who's hiring. I've landed more than one position by just talking to friends and saying, oh, well, Booz Allen and Hamilton is hiring. Gee, let's go talk to them and send them a resume and then get an interview set up. So let's see. Relative experience. We're going to go over this in more detail in just a minute, but if you see here an example, no, I was a cashier at Target that checked out customers and balanced my drawer. Yes, I was a cashier at Target who signed up 20% of my customers to the Red Card program and received the highest customer service score on a secret shop experience. So here's the deal. You always want to make your employer know what you've done for other people that you work for, not just that you work for them, but what did you do? Were you involved in a project that was a $10 million project, a $100,000 project? Did you boost sales? What did you do that was a success story for that company? And put that on your resume. Don't just say you were a cashier at Target. That doesn't do anything for you. We've already looked at the education. You put your institution and location. Now, there's always young people, usually your fresh outs from college, ask me, well, gee, all I have is education. Well, maybe. I'll go over that in a moment about what you do when all you have is education. If you have a certification, move it to the top of the resume. You can. That's a tip. Usually, it depends on the cert. If you're applying for something that requires a certification, yes, put it on top. If you're applying for a classified position and you have a security clearance, yes, that should be very easily noticed on your resume. Pay attention to details. Spelling errors, no. Spacing errors, no. Grammatical errors, that's a no-no. Misuse of a word. Remember, employers want to hire people who pay attention to details and are committed to accuracy. Your resume will give them insight on this, so it's important to get this document looking excellent. Hints. Ask someone to review your resume. Ask a friend. Read it aloud, one word at a time. When we get to the interview, it's always, you can practice interviewing, but certainly for your resume, you need to be very, get a second opinion, get a third opinion on your resumes, okay? Now, let's
Hi,
look
Walter.
at yes,
Hey,
question.
quick question. Earlier you mentioned that employers don't spend a ton of time looking at the resume. So what are some things a prospective employee could use to make certain things stand out on their resume?
I'll show you. Let's say you're a student. I'm going to show you some senior level resumes, but let's look at some student resumes and I'll show you. And this answers your question and also the question of what do I do if I don't have a whole lot of experience. Well, hold it. Here's a student, one of my previous students. I got permission to use his resume. You notice that he had a web page. I don't think it's active anymore. He got a job at General Dynamics with this resume. So what stands out? Well, the first thing that I would look at is this right here. So this is now a student. Now you notice he says professional, not a student, with over 6 years experience in software development and graduate of aerospace engineering. So he, in this case, most students, many students, do have some work experience. This is an example of his, so you see how he's putting his work experience before his education? And so if you don't have work experience, in the worst case, if you have nothing and no experience at all, you're just going to have to put your education. There are some things you can do. You can certainly put the skills that you have right here. So to answer your question, is the first thing they will look at is this top thing. Aha, this guy knows about CFD guidance. And you notice how he highlighted aerospace engineering. He highlighted his skills over here. See that? He has a web page, or he had a web page. He can easily be reached. There's his phone and his email. These are no longer relevant because he doesn't live in Orlando and he's changed his phone number. But I'm just showing this as an example. Let's look, okay, and then he puts on his education, which he would need to put. He puts his grade point average, graduation when it's expected. So you can put skills like this even if you don't have any work experience. What did you learn in school? What computer languages did you learn? Did you learn computer-aided design if you're in aerospace engineering? What testing experience? You can get this. He could have taken just some courses at UCF that involved use of these instruments. He could put it on his resume. Any certifications you have need to be put on the resume. Okay. Interests. There's nothing wrong. In fact, it's a good idea to put these, maybe lower down in the resume. And then in this case, he had some projects that he worked on. If you're a student and have no job experience, well, were you involved in student projects? Maybe an RC airplane. My students have to be involved in projects before they graduate because they have to take a senior design course that involves, in my case, building something. And I have 18 students that are building unmanned aerial vehicles, fabricating them, flying them, and demonstrating the science of aerospace engineering. And so they will put that on their resume, okay? Any leadership, student organizations, put those down. AIAA, that's an excellent, institution to belong to as a student. Okay, so that's an example of a student resume. Let's look some more here. Here's another student. His resume, he had me review his resume, and I made some changes. But here's I've left his name out. This is from University of Florida. So you see here how he put his skills up at the top, and I highlighted this. You probably would bold these. I highlighted them to show you the kind of things that employers would look at for hiring. Now in this case, you notice down here on his work experience, he doesn't have like the previous resume, he doesn't have things that stand out as professional experience. He had to work his way through school. In my case, I had to be I was a carpenter and had to work, on carpenter crews. Um, so he doesn't put his work experience at the top. He puts his education because it's more important. Here's some related coursework. I put delete later, but I think it's good to put these in if these are relevant courses for the position. He added volunteer and community experience, which is good. Now you notice he's gotten beyond one page. I don't like the one-page rule. People tell you, well, you have to stick your resume and put it on one page. Often you can. I just showed you my resume that was just on one page that got me 4 job offers, but you don't have to. Okay, let's look some more here. I want to highlight. Let's see. Look at this resume. Here, let's see. Wait a minute. Let me look some more here. Here's one. Oh, I just showed you that one. Sorry. Let's see. Okay, I think we've been over this resume where we've been over that one. And we've been over him. Let's see. Sometimes well, here's a resume. Let's look at this one. Here's a young lady that is gainfully employed. She no longer lives at that address. She was one of my students. So she went ahead, in her case, it was the same thing as not having industry experience. Now, one of the things I want to highlight here for everything, you notice how she puts her name in a different font. Choose your fonts wisely. Like, don't, you notice her name is in big font and the address. So this, I highly recommend you make your name stand out in the resume. Okay. So here's her education. Her grade point isn't all that great, but I'll tell you something. Employers don't necessarily look just at grade point. And in fact, that's almost a B average. That's not a very bad grade point. So here's her coursework. Here's her skills. Now you notice she highlights things. She bolds and underlines to break the skills out, and then indents and puts what her skills are down here. Clubs. Okay, see, so she's a member of these societies, which are professional societies, and the Sunshine Volunteer. It's always also good if you've done volunteer work. It shows that you care, that you're a valuable community member. So you can go ahead and put, if you've got volunteer work. Now, in her case, one page is fine because she doesn't have that much. She's new. She's about to graduate, looking for a job. You notice how she put her coursework here. You at least want to put your coursework out there like that, so people know, oh, well, she's had thermo, she's had C programming, C+, object-oriented, and so on. So here she put, so keep these, and you notice here, edited approximately 1,200 job descriptions. See that? So she did something. She didn't just work at Cheddar's. What did she do there? Even though it was just a food establishment, she did something that added value to the company. That's what employers are looking for. Interacted with customers in person and on the phone to help their needs, such as recommending and finding books. If she had done anything that maybe she could have said, for example, our store increased its customer base by 20% in the year I was employed there, or something like that. What did she do to make the business prosper? And you notice here also, this is summer work, summer work, summer work, summer work. That's fine. If you're a student and a fresh out, maybe that's all you've got is summer work. Okay, you don't happen to be lucky enough to have an internship experience where I've worked for a company like those previous resumes I showed you. So at least put this down. You notice how she highlights and makes capital. You want to capitalize things that you want to stand out. Let's see. Okay, now there's other ways you can do a resume. Let me see mine.
And we do
Okay,
have one
here's my
question in the
resume.
chat, Walter.
Yes, question?
The question from Russell is about the education section. Should I include schools that I did not complete a degree at?
Good question. Well, let's see. It depends. Yes, you should put down, if you attended that institution for a year or more, like for example, suppose you went to a community college for 2 years and then went on to a senior university. You certainly ought to put the community college down. If you attended the university for 2 years and switched to another university, yes, you should put down the prior university. Just don't put that you got a degree from there. Okay, does that answer that question? See, so here, for example, here's my education. So what you do on education, you put down the year, the degree, if you did a dissertation, in my case. So you notice how it's inverse chronological. And by the way, that applies for all resumes. You want to do it where you have your most recent education on top and then the prior education below it. Okay. Here's my certifications on professional engineering. Now, so the same thing applies for when you're doing your. Now, I'm showing you this resume, or my resume. It was some time ago, back in 2015. When you're older and you have more experience, you can put down things like a career resume, a career summary. If you don't, you saw in the previous examples where I put a career objective or a broad-based objective. If I was developing a resume for company, say a company, Boeing or whatever, and I had done the research and I knew what they were looking for, I would have as my career objective, I would tailor that objective somewhat to their specific need and put that at the very top of the resume. If there's different ways to do this, when you get more and more experience, in my case, I chose to do this. I provided a career snapshot. I put on my core competencies up here. If you have a security clearance, there's my clearance. So typically what you're doing, so then as far as your experience, do bullets. Bullets are good, but keep them short. This bullet is a little bit too long. But this bullet here is about the right length. I mean, if it takes, it depends on the position. Let's say I'm looking at, in this case, I landed a position with this company. I'm going to show you my letter. I got an offer letter from them and I accepted. So this resume right here got me a job offer and I took it, okay? So in my case, this is what they were looking for. So I did my research. I knew what they were looking for. And so I amplified and tailored my resume to highlight the areas that they were looking for. And that's what you need to do, okay? So here's just the rest of my experience. Let me see. Yeah, okay. So now I'm on page 4 out of 9. So you're going to say, gee, do I need a 9-page resume? I'm not going to say no. If you know the people at the company and you want them or if you've done your homework and done the due diligence and you have 50 years of experience like I do, yeah, you're going to end up with a 9-page resume with a bunch of publications. But I think most of you do not. Here's my publications. I have, and I'm still working. I've got a ton more now. I've got about 30. But so I put my I didn't mean to highlight that, but I had military experience, so I put that down. Let me get some more. You can also bios. You can do a biography on yourself, and a lot of times, in various instances, people just want half a page. What have you done, or who are you? And so you can put like 2 paragraphs, like I did. Earned a 59 point C. So this is something that I put. I earned the company a contract performance rating from a customer. So that right there is an example of what you want to put on your resume. Okay. This is some of the things I'm doing now. I'm chief engineer at this company, which, by the way, it's going to be a successful company. So my chief engineer position might grow up into being a full-time job at this company. And I'm author and owner of that company. But so what I'm saying is sometimes you need to prepare just a bio, just to summarize yourself. So in a bio, what are the things? Your name, your contact information, what you've done in succinct, maybe 1 paragraph, at most 2, and then some top-level jobs that you have currently. You saw my 9-page resume, but all that is in the past. This is more current and more up to date, okay? So enough on that.
So we did have a follow-up for the question earlier.
Yes, question.
So in this case, Russell started at Embry-Riddle and transferred to UCF. So even with listing no degree for Embry-Riddle, he's had potential employers be confused by it. So would you recommend listing both with either no degree or transferred, or just leaving Embry-Riddle off of that?
Okay, now say again, Chris. So he transferred. See, it depends. You have to know the circumstance. He went to Embry-Riddle for 2 years, and then what?
Yeah, something along those lines. He transferred, did not complete a degree in Embry-Riddle.
Yeah, I can. I am muted. So yeah, I went to Embry-Riddle for. It was about 2 years. Part of that was halftime, so probably like a year and a half worth of schooling before I transferred. And I also have an AA degree that I left prior to that. So I have my AA degree from Daytona Beach Community College, Embry-Riddle, and then UCF. And oftentimes when employers look at the resume, they see Embry-Riddle and then UCF, and they think that I got the bachelor's degree from Embry-Riddle and
right.
I'm going for like a master's degree or something at UCF, even though I have no degree issued next to Embry-Riddle, but they just see the 3 schools and automatically think that I have a higher degree or something.
Okay, well, what you might do there is do this. Put a bullet by the UCF, the place that you got a degree from, and put that at the top.
Okay.
Then you can put a dash or something below that with the other institution and the year you attended and what your major was. Was your major the same?
Yeah, the major was the same. So when they see the 2 majors, they think that I'll say aerospace engineering major, no degree issued, and then and then I had UCF, aerospace engineering degree, and projected date, graduation date's May 2022. But I guess for some reason,
I would put something. I'm sorry. I would put something like transferred. Make it clear that you're transferred to UCF or something in that in your description of Embry-Riddle.
Okay.
Transferred to UCF. That's okay. Put that down. Yeah. Don't leave it unstated, or else you're right. It'll be confusing. Russell.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Now, in your case, if you got a good grade point, by the way, grade points, if you have a good grade point, put it down. In my case, I typically, I had more or less like a 3.3 out of 4 grade point. I put it down. If you have, you saw an example of Patricia Baker resume where she had a 2.9 and she still put it down. If you have if you have a 1.5, if you have a low, even 2.9 is kind of borderline. Maybe you can leave it off. It's your call. Maybe if it gets much lower than a B, I would leave it out.
Hey, Walter, it's Jose here with Lockheed Martin. The one thing I'd also say, I mean, I graduated with a 3.01, so, nothing against GPAs, is whenever I look at a resume and there's not a GPA listed, I automatically assume it's bad. So you
Oh,
risk, I mean,
okay.
I'm assuming the students actually put the time in on this resume, and either they have a bad GPA or they didn't think it was important enough. Neither of those are a good message to me, you know.
Okay.
But so if it's a 2.9, that's at least something I can realize. If it's if it's unknown, then man, it must be really bad. That's just how I view resumes when it comes to GPA.
Okay, that's excellent advice. I'm not a hiring manager, and I think everybody listening to this should listen to an actual hiring manager. Actually, all of the student resumes that I've looked at had GPAs on them. So, Jose, what if somebody had a really, really bad GPA? I've had a few students that had like a C average. You think that should still put it down? In other words, that removes any doubt. I don't know. Put your GPA down. That's the advice. Here's another student's resume. It's always a good idea to put a paragraph on top that is. You know what? I'm doing you guys a disservice. Let me look at my options and turn off. I'm sorry. I'm showing too much space and it's garbaging up the files. Okay, there you go. So this person put his, just read this. Bachelor's degree candidate. Individual who's excellent organizational will ensure the goals of the project receives experience in variety engineering related. So always put something that catches their attention at the top, if you can. Okay. In this case, he doesn't have industry experience, but he put down the relevant courses he's taken, and then in this case he was self-employed. There's nothing wrong with being self-employed. In fact, that's a plus. That shows you've got initiative and chutzpah to start your own company and do something. And see, here's the things he did for his self-employment situation. Engineering skills. In this case, I'm about done, and I'm going to turn it over to the interview portion. But here's an example of something every student at UCF can put this on their resume, because that's a requirement for graduation. In this case, he did, just about every student can put that down. Put down that you use NX Nastran or Clio or whatever software, SolidWorks. Now in this case, down here, this is not good. The font size got too small, so that's something that you should fix. Don't have a second person look at your resume or a friend and say, hey, gee, that font size is too small. I hate to pick on Hunter. I'll have to. I think he's gainfully employed now. Use bullets. Keep the bullets short. And like that. And I think I'm done with resumes. I'm going to let the pros that do the interviewing take over. Is there any questions before I go? Let me.
We did have one more in the chat. If anybody else has any questions about resume specifically, though, definitely put them in the chat, or you can unmute and ask the question. But Michael had asked that he heard that employers are able to check UCF requirements to know that you took the required courses. So would you still want to include the courses like thermo and high-speed aerodynamics, or just technical electives like computer courses and environmental? And Jose responded to this in the chat as well, that the first person in the chain looking is not cross-referencing it against any UCF database. I've actually done some career fairs for Lockheed Martin, and that is absolutely true. The entire information that I had looking at resumes for engineering and technician positions was the requisition. That is what they're referencing you against, and that's all the information they get. So I would say if it's something basic like calculus, they're probably going to assume, the manager probably isn't going to put that in their requisition that you need to be a calculus expert unless it's really important. So the managers that set them up will probably assume you've taken those. But if it's something very specific to that job, if it's a job that involves thermal, I would definitely recommend including any thermal related classes you've had, even if it's a standard class.
Yeah, and
And
so Matthew asked if I'm part of a sports club team at UCF, should I add that? I would add it at the bottom, especially if you were a leader in that sports club. Were you a captain? Did you accomplish something? If you had just a minor role, you can choose to leave it off. If there's room, if your resume is already too crowded, you could probably leave it off. Should we put a list of courses, future courses? No, I showed you on the students' resumes that they did put their courses down. Jose, I'm going to defer to you on that. I don't know if many of the resumes I saw had some of the important courses. I don't know if that's.
so going back to Michael's question here about the requirements, and when it comes to courses, list the important ones, right? And make it, grade appropriate, right? If you're a freshman, put Calc 3 differential equations, because that's an advanced, later on the course. But if you're a senior or junior, don't bother putting Calc 1, Calc 2. Employees are already going to assume you have those skills. Talk about the high level courses, the elective courses, especially if they're more relevant to that employer. If you're going the thermodynamics track or a guidance navigation control track, you want to list those kind of skills prominently in courses, because they actually tailor and tell a story about what courses and education interests you have that can apply to the course. But yeah, echoing back what I said in the chat room, there's probably great databases that employers can check, but if you're going to a career fair, going cold to an employer, they're not cross-referencing it. They're spending 5-10 seconds initially on your resume and then starting the conversation from there.
Right. And okay, I agree. So Jose, you want to take over, and I'm going to release it to you, and then.
So yeah, Liam was actually gonna be driving the slides here, and I think so.
Can you guys see my screen?
I can, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you again, Walter, for giving that presentation. Now, Jose and I are going to present the interview skills and a little bit of resume workshop, but mainly the interview skills part. So
yeah, definitely. We don't have a resume from 1976, but it's still good. What I really, going back to Walter's presentation, I really liked it. It tells a story and really how it goes on through the ages. The antique resume I was curious at first, but then you've really adapted with the times. That's really a testament that going through all social medias and LinkedIn, I'm like, oh, okay, on here, so I mean, I think we all hope that we can still be as adaptable in 40 years of whatever Jeff
Yeah, I'm going to turn
has come up
75
with.
on Saturday, and I'm still working. But I didn't show this, but I put down my salary. That's another thing, salary requirements. I guess you're going to cover that, but I put down that I was making $265 a month at the University of Texas, working in a research assistant back then.
On that point about salary, is I would not advise you put a salary in there. Whoever says the salary first kind of sets a bar, right? That's not really the part of an interview or anything like that. That kind of goes to the next step, and we won't cover that specifically, but don't put a salary on the resume just of what you have or expect. I don't know, it just sets the wrong vibe.
Yes.
come with a number in mind, but let them say it first.
Yeah.
that I wanted you two to answer is what kind of, I got a coat and tie on. Do you expect that attire for interviewees? I don't know if it used to be in my day, but I don't.
So we will go into that. It depends on in the forum. For a career fair, definitely looks sharp. And we'll have that topic there. And interview, you don't get penalized for dressing up for the most part. You get made fun of on your first day if you show up in a suit and tie, but not at an interview. Um,
I can attest to that. I showed up on my first day like that, so But okay, we'll get straight into it. Let me see here. Okay, so we've just got preventer overview, showcase prep, interview prep. Feel free to pipe up with questions at any time during this, but at the end we'll have, it'll be open to questions from anyone. So just to start off, I guess, Jose, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, you can speak on my no.
Do you want me to?
No. So I'm Jose Castillo. I was actually the AIAA UCF president back in I believe the 2011-2012 school year. And I graduated with double bachelors in aerospace and mechanical engineering from UCF. And then again, I went back while I was a full-time employee and got my master's in aerospace engineering and not actually English. So clearly, because I misspelled aerospace there. And I have had multiple roles in Lockheed Martin. Predominantly I spent a lot of years on image processing and integration and test on-site international customer sites like in Italy. And then more recently, I'm in the cybersecurity realm. And yeah, as an aerospace engineer. So, it's definitely gone around with, my degree.
I didn't know you made it to Italy. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's different programs here can travel well, so definitely encourage you if you get a full-time job to try to get a lot of travel in before you marry up, get a kid, and have a dog.
I'm trying to find somewhere that'll send me to Australia. If they can do that, I'm in. So mine is not as lengthy as Jose's. My name's Liam O'Connor. My current job that I just rotated into is image processing. What kind of got me into that, which doesn't make any sense, is I had a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from University of South Florida. But kind of my path to where I am now was I've been at Lockheed for 3 years now. I got hired in kind of as a systems generalist, where I worked requirements and architecture. I started dabbling in integration and test, really fell in love with that, and spent the past 1.5 to 2 years doing that. So I did a lot of live fire tests out in Huntsville, Alabama, and Redstone Arsenal. And then more recently, I worked our hypersonic program, traveling all around the country all the time. That was literally the last 1.5 years, doing flight testing, pre-flight confidence testing, the entire works to get the missile on the plane and launched. From there, I kind of realized, hey, maybe it's time to try something else out. And that's where I started moving into modeling and simulation and image processing, where I am now. On the side, there's other stuff I do at Lockheed in addition. So I'm the new hire service panel co-lead, and then I help out with a few other panels and cohorts around campus. So I'll hand this over to Jose and I'll hop back in for the stars part.
Okay, so we're echoing some of the things Walter talked about. So typically at a career showcase like at UCF at the arena or whatever the venue is you'll already know what companies are going to be there. They do not surprise UCF. Everyone, it's been negotiated. They got their booths, they got everything, and UCF obviously wants to advertise to you, the students, who's going to be there, hype it up. So you're going to know who's going to be there. Lockheed Martin, Northrop, Raytheon, the non-defense companies. They're all going to be there. So you want to make sure you do your research and know what they're offering and what they're looking for. A lot of times companies will list their requisitions, if they want integration and test, or if Otis wants, some test engineers for their elevator line. I actually talked to Otis when I was a student there. And you want to make sure you understand what the company is, because the worst thing is you walk up to a company, have no idea what they do. I mean, at that point, why'd you even go up there? You wasted your time, you wasted their time, and they're going to know right away. And also apply online. Um, you want to so what happens is a lot of times companies will look and talk to you and just gain an interest, but at the end of the day you still have an application portal that they still need to follow their HR process to apply online. They actually need to have that connection, because if you just pass your resume and walk away, they're going to be like, okay, he was good, but am I supposed to like call this kid now or send him a letter, to his residential address he thought was pertinent to list on the resume? Um, no, just make sure you follow up on and apply to the positions online. And because that's going to be the employer connection to you officially, because that's going to start the HR pipeline. Um, and then dress to impress. Somebody asked about this earlier. If you want to, look sharp, you definitely, it sets the wrong message. And I understand why students do this. If you just kind of go in your street clothes to the career fair, it says like, hey, and unfortunately it's reality. But for the guys, just it doesn't have to be a tuxedo, someone said in the chat, or formal dress or outfit. Go ahead and put some nice jeans on and a nice button down shirt or dress shirt. Just look like you cared about how you looked when you walked in. That's more important than anything. It doesn't have to be the suit. And then something I kind of, some other things you don't think about is those little touches, is having the portfolio of your to carry around your resumes, because you don't really want to carry on the book bag. It's bulky, it's awkward. It's not the end all be all, but it's just one of those small touches where it's like, if you have a nice looking portfolio, you can easily whip it out when you are talking to, it's your turn in line, as opposed to like kind of fishing for a resume in your book bag that might get crumpled up or something. Is anything going on in chat? Let's see here.
No, I think we're good so far.
Nah. Okay. And then going onward is your 90-second commercial, because what's going to happen is usually when you walk up to a career fair, it's your turn in line, you've been waiting for half an hour or 10 minutes, whatever, is they're going to be like, okay, yeah, can I see your resume? And then they're going to start scanning it. But there's the 90-second commercial and the 15-second commercial. It's like, hey, my name is Jose Castillo. I'm an aerospace and mechanical engineering student graduating such and such time. And my interests are, a few hypersonics, thermal combustion, guidance, navigation, control, whatever it is. And you want to walk down that resume as quick as possible and let the speak to the resume that they're scanning quickly. And really, the commercial there is, it provides a clear picture of who you are, what is your vibe. At the end of the day, the resume tells a story about you, hopefully, and it provides a concrete story of like, here, this is a guidance navigation focused student. He's got the classes, he's done some research, maybe he's done some projects, but you can quickly go down your resume from the most important to the least important of what's going on in your resume. Because if you're talking about, maybe you don't have work experience, but you got some excellent research, talk about that, put that at the top. Or maybe conversely, you've got some great projects with AIAA. I was at the general body meeting a few weeks ago, and there's like, I think it seemed like 20 different projects going on. Those are great things to apply your knowledge and show off in your resume. And then also talking about something that excites you. You really, what happens is, there is, in your resume you can say what your experiences are, but you want to be able to say, hey, have some stories in your back pocket. What, those key projects, those key research things, and really be able to show the passion behind it. Like, you're just so excited to talk about it, but not too excited. Let the guy or woman have the opportunity to talk and ask questions, because if they aren't engaged and just start smiling and nodding, and that's a cue to like, maybe they're going to start playing the music for you. But then also, it's a two-way thing. Ask questions about what positions they're looking for, or they may ask questions to you too. And That's, the company is here to hire students usually, hopefully, most of the time they are. Um, so, that's just the reality of it. And then the other thing is to arrive early because, especially for the bigger name companies, those lines get long. But, one of the other things, I don't think it's listed here, is you do not, if you have 5 companies you want to go to, do not pick do not go to your top pick first. You want to get those jitters out the way, go maybe work from the bottom up or start, do the company that you're just there to maybe practice on, because you're going to slip up. You're going to think, oh man, that wasn't my best action. Maybe this is what I do, and you want to save your best showing for the company that you're most interested in. But then also keep in mind that, some of the big companies, those lines will take a while. I remember when I was a student going to these career fairs, or when we go, that the line can be half an hour. So you want to make sure that you actually block out amount of time, because if you're going between classes and stuff and it's 30 minutes, you may not be successful. So
And
keep
just to
on.
harp on what you talked about, Jose, bullet 5 is really important to me. It's the same way with like any group projects you guys have done. You can always tell who's the most passionate and who's done the most work on it by how they're able to talk about it. So anytime I've been in an interview, those are the people that stuck out to me that were just happy to talk about it, and really knew what it was that they did. And then were you gonna say something, Jose?
Yeah, it's kind of doubling back on the excitement, and what that matters is, what I'll see sometimes is students, since this is sort of society here, is just listing AIAA or SHEP or ASME or whatever, but not anything about it. If you're just going to list an organization but not really have anything to talk about your experience there, then it's like, okay, great, you know what SHEP is or AIAA. What did you actually do? And that kind of goes back to the excitement, is I don't care that you're part of 5 organizations. I really care that you part of one organization and really make an impact, and can actually tell a story about it, because, you don't get, it's quality, not quantity when it comes to those kind of things.
Yeah, and you'll see that theme pop up a lot in what we're talking about. It's all about what story, what picture you can paint of yourself. Like the interview doesn't know who you are. Your friends might know, your classmates, professors, but we don't know. So however you can talk to yourself is great.
And then another thing about, what your resume is, if you have different things, you don't know what that interview really chimes in on. Maybe they're really interested in cars and you put a project that you rebuilt an engine. They may ask questions more about that, something they feel comfortable with, Um, and then if you can show excitement there, then they're like, okay, wow, it's a good two-way communication. You definitely want the interviewer asking questions at the career fair, because the longer they're talking and you're talking, the better your chances are. If they just sort of like nod their head and say, okay, that's nice, all right, any other questions, and then chew you off, then it's like, it's not as effective engagement.
Yep.
Keep on going.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the star section now. So we're going to kind of get into the types of interview you might run into. For instance, at Lockheed, we use the STAR method. You can Google it, read all about it, but essentially it boils down to behavioral interview. Some other companies do a mixture of behavioral and technical. For the main part here at MFC Orlando, we do behavioral and we use the STAR method. So what is the STAR method? We kind of laid out here. It goes through situation, task, action, and result. And that all goes back to what story can you tell me? What was the situation you were in? What was the task you were assigned with or that you took on? How did you approach this task and what did you do? What were your actionables? And then what was the result of what you did? Did I save money? Did I finish this project, etc.? So just to harp on those a little bit more, the situation, this is all going back to telling that story. So set the scene. For instance, like let's say I'm a freshman and I get an internship. And the situation is I work at this factory, I do test engineering. They have this big production line where they're putting together relays. The problem is it's all this manual work. People have to travel back and forth to go get these little screws and parts, and it just wastes a ton of time. So what's the action I have for it? My action is they want me to make an autonomous delivery robot that won't kill anyone on the factory floor. You know, it'll avoid them, but it will also take care of all that parts moving around, so people can stay where they are, and it will bring stuff to them. So my action from there was I spent the semester building this robot up, testing the code, testing it out on the floor, making sure it didn't hit people. And then the result from that was I had a 30% increase in productivity. I saved the company X amount of dollars, etc. So you can do that with internships. If you don't have internships yet, you can do that with group projects you've had at school. It can be scaled up or down depending on what you have. It's something I still use. So for instance, now I use it on my actual work programs I've worked on. So I think you can see it in the screen behind me. So that's the missile I worked on, hypersonic missile. And something I would put on my resume now is we do a bunch of flight testing for this missile. I traveled to Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, California, all within the past couple of years, multiple times a year to get this missile flown. And part of what we have to do for this is we have pre-flight confidence testing. It's the last final test we do before this missile gets shot off a plane and I never see it again. And we want to do our final checkouts on it and say, hey, it's good. I have confidence we can actually put this on a plane. So the situation we have is that we have these missiles that are failing once they get to flight test. And I see that and I talk to my managers about it. I said, hey, I've been out to some of these tests. I see kind of what's going on. I don't think it's being done right due to X, Y, and Z. And I think I can do it better. So I talked to my managers about it and they put me in charge of being test conductor for the next test. You know, my task is to get this thing out on time to make it to the next flight test and to have a successful flight test. So what did I do to make sure that happened? While I was there, I made sure I met with all of the previous test conductors so that I knew what issues they had run into. So I knew what hurdles I'd have to overcome. I got there, I set up my test, I ran through all the test procedures, I recorded all that data and sent it back to my subject matter experts in management so they could look over it. So I had someone signing off on all the stuff I did. And I got that missile out of there within the required amount of time. So the result from that was it made it to flight test on time. Actually, it made it there ahead of schedule. We made it through all the profiles, vibration profiles, temperature, altitude we needed to. And then we had successful flight test from it. So that's a story I can tell and say, hey, I did this big thing for my program and I took this missile behind me and I got it on that plane and shot off. So it's all down to what story you can tell. And it's good to take anything you've done on your resume and practice that and practice your story. You know, it's not bad to sit in front of a mirror or even better, have a conversation with your friends and be like, hey, this is what I did in my internship, or this is how my group project turned out. And the more times you tell that story, the better you get at it for when that interview happens. You know, you don't want too much fluff added to it. You also don't want too little where they're like, I don't know what happened. You want to give them a nice, concise story that they can take away and ask further questions from. You know, you're
Yeah,
free to elaborate on it more once they ask, but you want to have that nice story.
yeah, and to continue the story, theme here is when we look at a resume or the resume as a standalone document gives you a good summary of everything you've done, and it gives an opportunity for the interviewer or the person at the career fair to focus on something. Or, if they choose to, maybe you have two projects and they really like one project and they ask you a question, and you can continue a story. Because whenever I meet a student or at a career fair, I think of them as one single story. That it's like, the resume has a lot of things on there. They went through it, but then there was something. If there's something they can focus in on, I can think of that student is this student that does this thing or had this experience, and that is sort of how I think of them as. And hopefully, it's a good thing that's positive that they can focus in on. But that's we a lot of times you'll see a lot of students at once, and you just have to start categorizing that. Oh, this is the student that had this experience, this research, or they did the rocket project or design, build, fly, and those are the things that you think of. Because these engagements are quick, so you can't tell your full life story succinctly. So it's really good to hone in on these specific stories that the interviewer may be interested in.
Yeah, it's how do you make yourself interesting to someone else? And I think, I guess a good example of it was like, I know when I was like midway through college, I'm looking at internships, looking at internships, having a hard time not realizing like, hey, back to like GPA, I had a good GPA, and I was like, well, I've got a good GPA. Why isn't anyone hiring me? Like, I get these interviews and no one's calling me back. And it's not all about that GPA. It's what experience do you have? And frankly, I didn't have a ton at the time. So like, I took on my own like senior design project. So I said, hey, I have this thing I'd like to work on. Can I work on you with it, or work with you on it? So at the time, I was super into cycling. And if you've ever seen like a race bike, they have these big disc wheels. And my idea was the wheels are way too expensive. I'm a college student, I don't have money. Why don't I just 3D print this clamshell that'll do the same thing for me? So I spent a semester doing that, trying to go through like the CFD analysis to show that, oh, it's actually faster. And that's something I had to put on my resume. And guess what? Next time I interviewed, I was able to talk about it, bring those 3D printed parts in to the interview, and I actually got something from it.
Yeah,
So
to go on to that theme about, it's great. It's never a bad thing to have an awesome GPA and awesome courses. And you just said that, that's great. It doesn't hurt you. But really, if all you're going to show up on your resume is, oh, hey, I was a student, I did, I got a 4.0 and I went home and then, called it a day, then that tells me that you weren't actually interested in the field. It's experiences what Liam just talked about, that they got interested, you got interested in programming, or you did an AIAA project, or you did research, something that tells me that you wanted to actually be involved and not just, go to class, do well in the exam and then go home. Because at that point, there's a million students and they're, coming to these things. I want someone that's actually engaged and can, provide value, because, you know, college and the GPA shows that you're teachable at the end of the day. It's the extra soft skills and the engagement that tells me that you'll actually be a good employee or intern or C-web or what have you.
yeah, and I guess that's a good wrap up for this. I guess the key takeaways are, tell a story, show me who you are, and let me ask questions from there. And then on the other hand, gain experience where you can. It's not all about that GPA. Definitely list it, but I would rather take somebody that interviews well, and I see someone that I want to work with. Telling that story about yourself. Do I see someone that I'd want to work with, and that maybe they're willing to go the extra mile, or they have the passion to really get dug in on it? Because everyone can improve, but what have you done, and why would I want to work with you? So that's how I see it. And I guess we can move into Q&A.
Yeah, so
So
please feel free, put it in the chat window or whatever, especially when we do these kind of events in person, we get a lot of questions, but this is really an opportunity, it doesn't have to be pertained specifically to interview or focus, go back to resumes or what have you, open up the aperture a bit here.
Yeah, so we do actually have a question on our YouTube stream chat. Somebody asked there, does LM hire European students? And what is a must-have skill for a new graduate?
So, Lockheed Martin actually has, sites around the world. We have, like UK Amtil is an example, but then we also have, I believe I read something about our Israel sites and stuff like that. We are a global company, so I would definitely look and see those opportunities, in England or, our European partner sites. But, I'll be candid, we are a U.S. defense company, so, we are more focused in on the U.S. Customer, and that kind of just as a U.S. company, you're expected a lot of our um, jobs are U.S. based, and that's the reality of it. But we do also have international sites, like I said, England, Israel, that we partner and actually have requirements over there. And then, like just even today, we still experience those key skills that we're looking for just internationally.
Sorry, cut out for me for a second. Jose, did you get the second part of that question where they were asking what's a must-have skill for a new graduate?
No, I totally forgot about that. I was just focusing on the international
I
part.
can
Go
answer
for
that a
it.
little bit, and you can give your
Yeah.
perspective too. I would say, well, I'd say it's a little bit hard to answer because ideally, I think you want to, you know, depending on the job, you want to show what skills you have that pertain to that job. I will say, as far as behavioral goes, you know, a willingness to learn, I think, goes a million miles as compared to just some random, like, you know, Excel skill or C++ or something. Like, those are definitely good things to have, good technical skills. But back to the story bit, if I see that willingness to like persevere and to learn, that shows me as a new graduate that, you know, that's somebody I can depend on and I can teach on the job, because no matter what, you're going to have to learn on the job.
Yeah, for sure. And then one thing I want to make sure people don't get the wrong message is when it comes to like soft skills is do not spend time on your resume saying that you're a good team player or you got excellent leadership skill as a bullet point, you know, or great communication skills or orator or whatever, you know, as a bullet point. I'm like, okay, you know, I don't, what, you know, you pick some great soft skills to list. What you should do is list your projects and your, again, the story and convey that message. And hey, that you led this AIAA project, or that you were effective in doing this skill or that, and your soft skills will emanate from that. And when it comes to like what was it, important skills, it really varies based off you know, your project and stuff. Of course, you know, some of the skills I always tell, especially the AIAA kind of level students or broadband, is, you know, programming is always a key skill. MATLAB is another key skill. Those are CFD. Those are some of the just key skills, especially when it comes to programming. A lot of times these days, you know, just having an introductory awareness of C++ or MATLAB or Python can just really, you know, just add that extra oomph to your repertoire.
It can't hurt. Just about any role now has some form of programming in it. So,
So,
go ahead,
in my
Walter.
case, oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I was going to say that in the LifeWorks Jobs Partnership Program, I'm a volunteer at that. It's where we try to get people jobs. We hold mock interview sessions with and these are people that are very shy. They don't have a very good job history. We're trying to help them, but I don't know if mock interviews, say if that makes sense, where you sit down with a friend and go through a mock interview. And the friend can ask you questions like, why did you leave your last job? Or have you ever been fired or something like that? I don't know. Does
Yeah,
that
no,
make sense?
definitely. And practice never hurts at the end of the day. You know, you definitely want to be able to tell you what Liam, I believe, said earlier is practice your story, practice giving those answers to those questions, and also just really have, you know, and the theme of practice is have someone that doesn't know you look at your resume, you know, or look, just, you know, you may have typographical errors, or this was not clear, or someone earlier about their Embry-Riddle experience that it was like kind of confusing. Well, show it to someone, you know that or that doesn't know you exactly, and then let them ask that question. You know, go to UCF Career Services or UF or wherever, and have them, you know, resume critique you, because you'll find probably a lot of easy got yous. I've looked at some resumes, you know, to help some people out, and there are just some clearly defined issues with it. Like, hold on, you misspelled this. This wasn't clear. Please, you know, clear it up. Because as soon as you start, as if someone who's actually looking for you to hire you or whatever notices, you know, errors on your resume or it's confused, you're starting to lose them right away. That it's like, oh, they're like, well, you spelled this wrong, or you spelled that wrong, or this guy listening to his bio, he spelled aerospace engineering wrong. Like, hold on here, what's going on? You know, that's what they start focusing in on, and you've lost the momentum.
And
Uh,
Walter, on the
Go
mock
ahead.
interviews, actually, we have mock interview panels at Lockheed. So I did a bunch of those before applying to certain positions there. So not a bad idea.
Okay.
And I want to add to Jose's point real quick. Definitely have your resume read over by some friends or family or somebody, that just hasn't seen it before. They don't necessarily need to be an expert in engineering, because misspell things. I actually have a friend that couldn't get a job for months and months, and it turned out that he had misspelled engineering on his resume. So he was getting filtered out. The computer systems wouldn't even put his resume through to a recruiter because he didn't have an engineering degree. So after he asked me take a look at his resume, I fixed that one thing and he immediately started getting calls. So it could be something that simple that's keeping you from getting a job.
And and also, it doesn't have to be an engineering person. It's just a professional in a completely different field. My wife's in the healthcare field. When I looked at her resume, um, I found some issues. I was like, okay, what is the message you're trying to convey? I don't know anything about all these credentials. I don't know about this experience, but what is the story you're trying to say? And we really reworked it, and it really gave it that extra that has really excelled her in her career, because it really, when you look at the before and after that kind of her resume specifically, I'm like, wow, look at the difference here. You've actually now clearly conveyed the skills and really told an accurate story about the leadership that you've given out. So, like we've
I
all.
think we've got a question in chat too from Russell. It was back to when I was talking about bringing that sample into one of my interviews. So I'd love to hear your perspective on this, Jose, but I'll just mention it quickly. So he asked, you mentioned you brought that part into the interview. Would you recommend having samples from your projects with you, even if it's just pictures or small parts of it? I would say from personal experience, it's not a bad thing to do. So I actually got hired into Lockheed Martin off that interview, bringing those parts. But also we mentioned having like a professional portfolio with you. That's not just to carry around your resumes. If there's interesting printouts and stuff you can bring of, like, I don't know, some assembly you did or some paper you published or something, it can't hurt to have it on you. So if they're talking about it and you're having a good discussion on it, you can be like, hey, I've got this here. You can see, I actually modeled this and this and this, or here's the paper I got published. I don't think it's a bad idea. Would you find it weird, Jose?
I would say be ready, but don't read the audience, right? Because I've had engagements where, especially after an event or something, where there's a really eager student that's got their laptop ready and they want to show you something, and it's like, you know, just offer it as an option. Be like, hey, I did this 3D CAD modeling. I've got examples, if you'd like to see it, or, just sort of slightly mention it, but don't like force it on them, because there may be 50 students behind you and it's like, okay, now let me show you this nice widget. It's like, oh, okay, it's off-putting, but maybe they really are into 3D modeling. They're like, oh wow, that's really cool. And you like, hey, I've got an example with me. They're like, oh, okay, cool. Let me see. You know, you may that you don't know what that person's personal background is, and that's why you want to be able to have a few different experiences and stories read at the ready. And they're gonna once you tell you finish your commercial, and they're gonna be like, okay, well, let me ask a question about this widget. This is really I'm really interested in. There's someone that really is into. Heck, sometimes people are really into academic or extra I can't even say it, sports. Like, oh, okay, you were a captain of this. Oh, okay, that's cool. And then you're like, oh yeah, I did it for a few years, and you're engaging with the interviewer and just prolonging the engagement, which is just, the more they're talking, the more they're asking questions, the more they're interested in you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was on the varsity track team at Texas, so I put that on my resume at the bottom. Doesn't hurt.
Yeah, and
And
then it's just an extra feather that maybe they're like, oh, okay, that's cool.
and if you have somewhere online like a LinkedIn or something where you keep all those project notes and pictures, even if you don't have it with you, if you're having this great conversation, they want to know more, you can always refer them back to that.
And going back to the experiences where I on my first drafts of my resume, I was an Applebee's server for like 4 years. And I listed that experience as one of my predominant experiences back when I was, a sophomore or junior. So I always, I always harken back to that when a student comes to me and says, oh, shows, a long-term, hourly employment. What it does tell me is that, okay, you can hold a job. That's always a big question mark, especially for the underclassmen. Just like that's never even held a job. Okay, is your first day at Lockheed Martin going to be your first day on any job? I mean, if you've worked at a Dairy Queen or an Applebee's, at least I know that what a holding a job looks like, and you won't have attendance issues or something like, for God's sake, like that.
Any other questions?
Liam, it's Jason.
Hey, Jason.
Hey, kind of got a question for you guys. What do you guys think about the follow-up process? How crucial is that to the interview?
The follow-up process, you said?
Right, like following up, the thank you, and kind of, I guess, repitching yourself a little bit after the interview. How critical you guys think that is for the interview process? Like,
Walter, do you
following
have
up
any
with
experience on that?
Yep.
So I understand what you're asking. I would like to hear from Jose and Walter, because I can say, in my experience, I think I only did that once or twice.
Yeah.
So I can't speak to it very much personally.
It really depends on the person. Usually a lot of it, if it's a roundtable interview with someone that HR is, I would say it doesn't hurt, but be brief. Be like, hey, thank you for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it. Maybe follow up on a question, that maybe you weren't sure of, like, hey, or an action item. In essence, not really an action item, but just be like, hey, I really engaged, but don't spend a lot of time reselling yourself, because they've already, talked to you. They have an opinion of you, and hopefully we'll follow up. But it's sort of just a courtesy. It's a nice nicety, but don't tell your life story again in an email.
So basically the email is the proper. Back in my day, it was surface mail, not a snail mail. Now it's more email, right? As a thank you or whatever.
Or a TikTok message, we were talking about TikTok earlier.
Do a little dance for him.
Him in the DMs, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. Can I show? Let's see. Steve, Chris, can you let me have the screen a second? I forgot something important.
And while you're pulling that up, Russell's got another question. How do we go about getting a mock interview at Lockheed Martin? So I guess I can answer that a little bit. So the mock interviews I was talking about was once I was already employee. There's obviously you can interview for different roles on site. In this instance, I was interviewing for a leadership development program that we have, and we had mock interview panels set up for that. I would say the best way for you to do mock interviews would be to try to do them on your campus or through some organization, or hopefully in the future we can come back on campus. And we used to hold interview sessions. They weren't mock interview sessions, they were actual interviews, but we would have a resume review beforehand where you could ask questions, and then an actual interview later. So hopefully in the future we can bring those back.
Yeah, and it kind of just go in there and put a shameless plug for the College Work Experience Program. We at Lockheed Martin Missiles and Fire Control, West Side Orlando near Universal, we're starting actually a big push for CWEP position. So if you don't know what CWEP is, Google it. But it's basically long-term co-op experiences on our site. We're doing hybrid work experiences and actually on site. So that's also a great way for a UCF student to get involved with Lockheed Martin specifically.
Oh, so I can send you some of my students. I'll tell you
Hey,
what, I'll handpick the brightest ones and weed them out for you.
Oh, just to send them all.
Yeah, send them all. We'll take them.
And literally, if you don't know what it is, just Google UCF CWEP, College Work Experience Program, to find out more.
Okay, I wanted to show, I forgot to mention in the cover letters. So here's an example of a cover letter, a friend of mine. so he writes, "Dear hiring manager." So that's the other thing. Usually you don't know who the hiring manager is. Typically you just don't. But here is his. He's a creative problem solver. He highlights an important specific thing he did at a company, his accomplishment. And as you can see, I have the skills and experience that would be effectively used in the area of systems engineering. So apparently, this is for a systems engineering position. So he has tailored his cover letter. So I always think that cover letters, I assume they're still a good idea. And nowadays, you send them. So could you guys help me out here? How do you, are cover letters the normal process for at Lockheed, or how does that work?
So when it comes to cover letters, there's a time and a place. It's good to have one, but usually, in my experience, we're not filtering through the HR database, online, right? So we're really looking at the resume, maybe the initial review, 5, 10 seconds. So at that point, it's the resume really quick, really fast, and what catches your eye. So maybe for a more focused, if you're gonna you got referred to someone you want, really hone in and target, sure, that's a good place for a cover letter, but just know your audience. Back to what I said earlier about, this person doesn't know anything about you. So if you're gonna do a cover letter, which is effectively your 90-second commercial, just in Word format.
So we've got a few questions in chat. I'll start with the first one from Corey Carpenter. He said, is it better to have a more detailed, information-focused resume or a more graphically pleasing resume with less information but is more stylized?
For that, it's better to have a fuller looking resume that tells a lot of good information, but is still pleasing to the eye. So, I mean, that's kind of a yes answer, honestly. But don't go too crazy with the stylization either. I've seen resumes, especially from students, that look really cool, that will grade themselves and just give themselves a scorecard on the end and be like, oh, look, just make it look professionally pleasing, but do not, we're not a graphics department, group. So don't go on the far end of it. Make it look nice, but don't, a lot of good content in there. And the thing is also make sure your resume looks kind of full, because if you put a lot of white space on your resume, it's kind of like, oh, get creative, put columns, headers, page breaks, but don't just leave a lot of white space. That kills you. Get creative with the margins, but don't make it look too full either, and make it one page.
Right.
So I know, was there anything on the YouTube chat? I know, Chris, I'm not looking over there, but
Just that one question you guys answered, but he did thank you for answering his question.
I have a question. There's a question. My basic degree is from healthcare. I have an interest in UAVs and medicine, have published on this quite a bit. In my case, should I also highlight my healthcare accomplishments in my resume? Well, I have to, whoever that sent that, if you want to pursue the healthcare profession, you want to put that in. If you're after an aerospace engineering job, because you have an interest, I would need more information to answer that question, but I would put my healthcare accomplishments in the resume. You know.
yeah, and another way to think about that is, the degree does matter to a certain point. I'm not, for like systems engineering at Lockheed Martin, we have a wide array of engineering degrees. But if you have a completely healthcare focused degree, it becomes a hard sell, because at the end of the day, the manager has to advocate of why this person with an English degree or healthcare degree should be hired on as an engineer. And the higher the mountain they have to climb, the harder it is for them to really advocate for you. converse or taking a different angle is, we've had a lot of students that will have a degree that in one field, and then now they're pursuing a degree in engineering or a master's degree. Okay, now that's something that ties back over there. Or, think of it in a different way. It's the story, right? That you could say, hey, I pursued a degree, basic degree, as you phrase it, in healthcare, but then, being inspired by UAVs and medicine, I'm now chasing either a bachelor's or a master's in some engineering field, aerospace or whatever. Okay, great. Now that's an interesting story, actually. So but there are those the realities of your degree. We do have some requirements at the end of the day.
I knew a young lady that wanted to be an astronaut, and she really impressed me. Her presentation. I mean, if I was an employer, I'd love to have her in my company. But she actually had a business card that had. It was the most professional looking business card, and this was a junior at UCF. And what do you guys think about business cards? I mean, that impressed me.
Business cards are definitely not a bad thing to have. But again, it goes to the forum, right? So when I was in AIAA as a college student, I went to some conference or whatever. It was at the Coronado Springs. I believe it was the Chef National Conference. And what was great about that was that a business card, having a business card as a student, it's something that you could slip to some engineer in an engagement or whatever that, I gave a great answer to some panel events or whatever. I asked a question, or it was some sort of engagement, and there was an engineer that was in the crowd. It's like, oh wow, that was really good, and yada yada yada. But I didn't have my resume on me, but I had my business card, and I was able to, we were able to exchange business cards and actually start a connection that way. So it's a good entryway, but I definitely wouldn't say, start passing out business cards at a career fair,
Right.
the person in line, because they're like, I got your resume already. It has all your
Right.
information on there.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to keep a Rolodex of business cards.
To harp on that a little bit, yeah, at like a career fair or something, like we said before, you should be applying already in the system, and then you talk to them, they have your resume, and they can reference the system back on that. The times I found business cards useful is for like exclusively networking type events, where the company sent or something like that, where you're not carrying around a resume, but you're still meeting people. It's easier to hand someone a business card rather than tell them like, this is my LinkedIn, look me up, because chances are they're going to forget you. But if they have something physical like a business card, they have something to reference.
I don't
All
see any
right.
more questions.
Oh, can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. I just wanted to say, Mr. Castillo there. Hey, it's so glad to hear from you again. I was at the AIAA meet that we had a couple weeks back or whatever, where you spoke to. I didn't think I'd be seeing you again so soon, but hey, it's always nice and everything. And thanks for everyone that's been presenting. But I just want to touch on something that you guys have been mentioning. I know that a lot of the different things you were talking about with the star interviewing methods and all that kind of stuff. You mentioned that you kind of want to have a story that you can talk to the interviewer and talk about yourself or whatever. But I was thinking when I was hearing that a lot of the things that I've heard as far as interviews go and everything is that a lot of people that I've heard before have said you kind of want to hold back on how much you say or how much you end up talking, and especially talking about yourself or whatever, just so that it doesn't come off as, I guess, self-centered or whatever to the interviewer. So I just wanted to ask if you had any thoughts on that, and if there was some kind of balance that we should look for when we're involved in all this.
So I'm happy to get started on that one. Like, your resume is going to have a lot of stuff on it, and you want to be able to talk to all of it. That doesn't mean you need to have some giant narrative about yourself, but you want to be able to tell a concise story about whatever that thing is. So whether it's I did flight testing, or I built this robot, or I worked on these requirements. I want to have some story where I can walk through those things. It doesn't have to be a 5-minute spiel on what it is. It just has to be a concise story you can talk about. And then I think I would say on the, like, talking about you, it is about you. They're interviewing you. They want to know about you and what you did. I think in our slides, we talked about use I. What did you do? I don't want to know what your group accomplished necessarily. Like, that's great, but what did you do on the project? It's great. Okay, I worked with others. That's fine. You get along with people, but then what did you contribute? So I think it is self-centered in a way. I don't see a way to like not make it selfish, but then again, I don't think people typically come off that way in an interview.
Yeah, no, for sure. Anytime you're engaging about, a 4 or 5 minute engagement with the other person just nodding their head and not asking any question, sometimes, especially, at a career fair or maybe just after a student event or something, some student is just going on and on and on and on and on. And I'm like just trying to find a natural break to maybe give another student an opportunity, or just like, okay, great, this is all good, but okay, okay, oh yes, no, please, that's really nice on your laptop. That's what you want to avoid, because then you're at a certain point you're going too hard, and now you've lost the audience.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so, pretty much. Thanks for clearing that up.
No worries. So Walter had another one in chat. Can the STAR project story be someone? So, oh, sorry, that was someone else, and then I said Walter said it. So yeah, absolutely agree with Walter. I can give an example of that. So when I was in college, in addition to my internships, I had a mentorship with a NASA engineer. It was literally him building a plane from a set of blueprints. So I worked with him for 3 years, and every interview I went into, I kind of just updated where we were at on the project. Like, the plane wasn't done, but what work had I done on it? So I did all of these composite layups. I learned the process to do, combine the resin and put it down on fiberglass. Then I learned how to do it with carbon fiber. I learned how to read blueprints, modify blueprints, because we had to update stuff from it, because these were from like the 70s or something. So as long as I think you still have some result to show, something you learned, or some progress you made, you can still tell that story.
Yeah, for sure. And then even like, going back to like actual, engineering work, a lot of times is you are giving statuses on ongoing work. It's not just, these are projects that will last years at a time. So progress isn't in itself results. What is the current status of this effort? So if it's in the example of this blueprint project, your current result is, hey, we have gotten to this stage of the project. It is ongoing, but you don't just go from 0 to 100. It's a gradual process.
Yeah, most things don't get a nice, neat little bow on them.
Right. I had a question that I'm amazed hasn't come up yet. Security clearances. So you've got students that have no clearance at all, and they're going to work on something that requires probably a secret clearance. Isn't that, how does Lockheed, for instance, handle a 6-month waiting period or whatever it is for students?
So
Could you comment on that?
Another shameless plug for CWEP, because all of our CWEPs that go into systems engineering, it automatically put in for a clearance, because we recognize there is a wait time. And so some CWEP positions will actually require you to get an interim clearance. Actually, the CWEP position I went in when I was working for a missile program, we waited 2 months. I got hired on, but they needed a clearance for all the work was classified. So it was sort of a waiting period. It's very individualistic there, but that's part of the reason why we have such a great hire rate with our CWEPs, because they can easily transition from a CWEP that has a clearance to a full-time employee that already has their clearance and can hit the ground running, as opposed to a fresh college new hire that has no clearance. That's just, one of the perks, effectively.
Okay.
So, how long?
And I'll
Just me.
Sorry, Jose broke up a little there. I was going to add to that. I actually came from another company to Lockheed Martin and had to get a clearance for that. And the interim clearance was relatively quick for me. It took a few weeks. So they just waited for my start time until that interim clearance came through. In my case, it was about a month. So instead of giving 2 weeks notice, I waited 2 weeks. And then once they gave me a start date, I put my 2 weeks notice in. So I was kind of working for a couple of weeks for my old company with an offer waiting for that. But if you're a student, that's not really an issue. You would just, hopefully get an offer before you graduate. And worst case, have a couple of week wait.
National Air and Space Intelligence Center, it was like 6 months to get a top secret, SITK clearance.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
I mean,
interims are
that's
pretty
a whole
quick.
different field. Top secret and all that stuff. I mean, that's a secret, but
Right.
brandishing your top secret clearance everywhere. It's like, okay, we get it, you're cool. But that's why another thing, if you get one, is a big discriminator on your resume, because they're like, oh wow, this guy's serious. He's got the experience and he's got the clearance, and there's time in that. So like I know, Walter, you mentioned earlier, listening to clearance or no, if you get a clearance, you put that prominently on
Prominently, yes.
there, that says, hey, I've got a secret clearance, because that company's gonna, I know when I was in an Uber one time, some guy doing it, he was actually working for some contract or consulting defense company that was like, and he's like, hey man, if you know someone that has a top secret clearance, so.
Well, my son has a top secret clearance. He works in the Pentagon, and he said with all the cyber security, he's in cyber, he said you're talking 200,000 or 150,000 per year starting with the clearances.
Yeah, it's yeah, if you can get one, it really amps your resume up. But and in case anyone's wondering, you can't just apply for a clearance. You have to be sponsored by a contractor. There is no just
system.
go to Pentagon.com and say, hey, I'd like to apply for a clearance.
No, you can't.
Unfortunately.
No.
Any questions out? I think
don't
we
see any
finally
other-
exhausted them.
Yeah, I don't see any other questions. And my internet's breaking up, so this is good timing.
Yeah. Perfect timing.
People want to guess what he was gonna say.
Yeah, I'm hearing about half of what you guys are saying.
Oh no. Were there any more questions on YouTube? I think we've exhausted all the ones here unless somebody has something.
I did not see any on YouTube.
Okay. Well, thank you all for having us here. Hopefully we can do some more of these in the future, or hopefully we can make it back on campus sometime in the future too. We'd love to do that, but thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely.
I echo that.
Yeah, and definitely stay engaged with the Central Florida section. And all second, we are working with them, so stay tuned for future events, at least on the Lockheed Martin side. So, and yeah, I know AIAA always historically had lots of other companies, Raytheon, Boeing, other companies. I mean, I'm biased. I do on defense.
If you're not a member of AIAA, please join.
Yeah, definitely check it out. I posted the information in that thing earlier, engage.aiaa.org/Central Florida. Most of our events these days, we're actually doing a virtual stream as well. So even if you're not a member, you can always join us for events like this that are going to be online. Yeah, and thank you, Walter, Jose, and Liam for joining us tonight. I know it's kind of late after work, but it's great to have you guys come and talk to everybody. And I think it was a great presentation. Everybody appreciated the information tonight. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. And if you want to refer back to this, it will be on our YouTube channel starting tomorrow. So have a good night, everybody.